the incredible power of the arrival of AI.
AI.
AI?
AI.
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 What if the most expensive idea in tech right now suddenly had a free alternative that performs just as well, maybe even better, and it didn't come from Silicon Valley but from the other side of the world? Because if that sounds like the kind of plot twist that would normally be reserved for a sci-fi movie, it just quietly happened in real life. And most people didn't even notice until the noise started getting too loud to ignore. Somewhere between hype cycles and billion-dollar valuations, China dropped an AI model that is now being described as a direct rival to OpenAI's most advanced paid systems. And whether you believe that's overblown marketing or a genuine turning point, one thing is already clear. The balance of power in artificial intelligence is no longer stable. Now, if you clicked on this, you probably didn't come here for polite tech commentary. You want to know what this actually means, why people are suddenly talking about a free ChatGPT killer, and whether OpenAI should actually be worried or just mildly annoyed. The short answer is that something unusual is happening, and it's forcing even the biggest names in AI to pay attention in a way they probably didn't expect this soon. In the tech world today, people tend to split into two very different camps. On one side are the AI pessimists. These are the people who are convinced that everything peaked somewhere around GPT-3. 5. And since then, it's just been expensive rebranding and incremental upgrades disguised as revolutions. They're usually the same voices who still think most innovation is a bubble, who complain that AI is overrated, and who treat every new model announcement like it's just another overhyped press release dressed up as history in the making. They're skeptical, they're cautious, and they are often very confident that none of this will matter in 5 years. Then there's the other side, the optimists. These are the people who look at every new model and immediately start imagining the future. AI doctors, AI engineers, AI teachers, AI assistants that don't just answer questions but fundamentally change how humans work and think. They believe we're not at the end of progress but at the beginning of something far bigger. To them, each leap in model capability is a stepping stone towards something close to artificial general intelligence, whether that becomes humanity's greatest tool or its most complicated invention yet. Here's the funny part. Pessimists often sound more reasonable in the short term, but optimists are usually the ones who end up shaping industries. Not because they are always right, but because they move early, build fast, and ride the wave before everyone else admits the wave exists. And in this space, optimism often depends on trusting the companies leading the charge, especially names like OpenAI and figures like Sam Altman, who have essentially become gatekeepers of the most advanced AI systems in the world. For a long time, those gatekeepers held a comfortable position. A model called DeepSeek R1 entered the conversation, and it didn't just show up quietly, it arrived with claims that immediately shook the AI community. Released with a MIT license and open access, it positioned itself as a free alternative capable of competing with high-end systems that cost hundreds of dollars per month to access. And in a world where premium AI is becoming a subscription economy of its own, free and competitive is not a small claim. It's a direct challenge to the current order. Some people immediately assumed it was timing. The release happened around a period when global tech news was already chaotic, including discussions around TikTok's regulatory situation in the United States being temporarily resolved. Whether that overlap was coincidence or calculated PR strategy, it added fuel to an already growing fire. Because in tech, timing is never just timing, it's narrative control. At the same time, while this model was being discussed, Sam Altman was not exactly sitting in silence. He was attending major political and industry events, including high-profile gatherings tied to U.S. leadership transitions and tech policy discussions. Meanwhile, other major figures in tech were also in the spotlight for their own reasons. Mark Zuckerberg was busy pushing forward AI integration across Meta's ecosystem. Jeff Bezos was largely focused on his post-Amazon ventures and private projects. And Elon Musk was doing what Elon Musk does best, commenting publicly on AI progress while simultaneously criticizing competitors and pointing out flaws in systems like ChatGPT whenever the opportunity appeared. But DeepSeek R1 wasn't interested in celebrity commentary. It was trying to compete on performance. Early comparisons suggested that in certain areas like mathematical reasoning and software engineering tasks, it could hold its ground against OpenAI's most advanced reasoning models. That immediately triggered excitement, skepticism, and of course, the usual internet debate cycle: hype, backlash, counter-backlash, and then endless benchmarking arguments. And if you've been around the AI space long enough, you know the first rule of benchmarks: never trust them at face value. They are not neutral measurements of intelligence. They are carefully constructed tests that can be influenced, optimized, and sometimes gamed. In fact, benchmarks are often compared to dating profiles, carefully curated, selectively impressive, and not always representative of real-world behavior. There's even more controversy when you realize that some benchmarking platforms, including widely referenced ones in the AI community, have had funding connections with major AI companies themselves. That doesn't automatically invalidate the results, but it definitely adds a layer of skepticism that experts can't ignore. So when a new model suddenly appears performing extremely well on these benchmarks, the natural reaction is not blind belief, but cautious curiosity. What makes DeepSeek R1 particularly interesting, though, is not just its performance claims, but how it was built. Unlike traditional AI models that rely heavily on supervised learning, where humans feed large data sets and guide the model toward correct answers, this system leans strongly into reinforcement learning. That means, instead of being explicitly told what the correct answer is, the model is repeatedly allowed to try, fail, adjust, and try again until it gradually improves. A simple way to understand this is to imagine a toddler learning how to climb stairs. No one gives the toddler a manual titled "Proper Stair Navigation Techniques." The child just attempts, falls, adjusts balance, and slowly learns through repetition. Or, to make it even more relatable, it's like assembling IKEA furniture without instructions. You will probably fail several times. But eventually, you figure out what fits where through trial, error, and mild frustration. In DeepSeek R1's case, the system generates multiple possible answers, evaluates them based on a scoring mechanism, and then gradually reinforces the patterns that lead to better outcomes. Over time, it builds an internal strategy for solving problems without being explicitly told every step. That self-guided improvement process is what makes it both powerful and slightly unsettling, depending on how you interpret it. Even more disruptive is the fact that it is open source. That means developers aren't locked behind corporate paywalls or restricted APIs. They can actually inspect, modify, and build on top of the model directly. And it comes in different sizes too. Smaller versions, like the 7 billion parameter model, are light enough to run on relatively modest hardware. Then there are mid-range options, like the 32 billion parameter version, which many consider the practical sweet spot between performance and accessibility. And at the extreme end, there's a massive 671 billion parameter version that requires serious infrastructure, the kind usually reserved for large organizations with dedicated compute clusters and electricity budgets that make normal startups nervous. This variety matters because it changes who gets to participate in AI development. Instead of only massive companies being able to experiment with cutting-edge intelligence systems, smaller teams suddenly have access to tools that were previously out of reach. A startup could potentially build a sophisticated assistant without needing tens of millions in compute funding. Independent developers could experiment with reasoning systems without waiting for approval or API access. And that is where things start to get genuinely interesting, because the implications are not just technical, they are structural. Imagine a virtual assistant that doesn't simply retrieve information on command, but gradually adapts to your behavior over time. Instead of acting like a search engine with better answers, it becomes a system that understands your preferences, work habits, and long-term goals. The experience begins to feel less like using a tool and more like collaborating with a digital partner that learns alongside you. For software developers, this could mean an assistant that goes beyond generating code snippets. It could recognize recurring patterns in your projects, understand your coding style, identify common mistakes, and offer solutions tailored specifically to the way you work. Over time, it would become increasingly effective at helping with debugging, project planning, and technical decision-making. Rather than replacing developers, it would function as a highly capable teammate that accelerates productivity and reduces repetitive work. The same idea extends far beyond software engineering. In business environments, AI assistants could help manage complex workflows, organize schedules, monitor deadlines, and even anticipate potential bottlenecks before they become serious problems. Teams could spend less time on administrative tasks and more time focusing on strategy, creativity, and innovation. In many cases, AI would move from being a passive assistant to an active participant in the decision-making process. Education is another area where the impact could be transformative. Imagine an AI tutor that understands how each student learns best. If a learner struggles with a particular concept, the system could adapt its explanations, provide alternative examples, and adjust the pace of instruction accordingly. Instead of forcing every student through the same learning path, education could become far more personalized and effective. Perhaps the most significant change is how humans interact with technology itself. For decades, computers have largely been tools that respond to commands. These next-generation AI systems hint at a future where technology becomes collaborative rather than merely responsive. People will not just use AI to find information, they will work alongside it to solve problems, generate ideas, and achieve goals more efficiently. If this trend continues, it could represent a shift as important as the rise of the internet or the smartphone. The companies and developers building these systems today may be shaping a future in which AI assistants become an essential part of everyday life, fundamentally changing how people work, learn, and create. In fields like law or science, this becomes even more impactful. A legal assistant powered by such a model could not only draft contracts, but also walk through its reasoning step by step, showing how it arrived at each clause. In research environments, it could help generate hypotheses, test logical consistency, or explore experimental directions in a way that accelerates discovery rather than just supporting it. But alongside excitement comes a deeper question that the industry cannot avoid. Whether that leads to a healthier ecosystem or a more chaotic one depends entirely on how responsibly the technology is developed and adopted. If you're looking at all of this and wondering what you're supposed to do with the information, the answer is simple: watch closely, experiment carefully, and don't assume the current hierarchy will stay the same. Because in technology, stability is usually temporary and disruption is often just a matter of timing. And right now, timing is exactly what makes this moment feel different.